How's it going, everybody? This is the Nitty Gritty. My name is Chad. With me is Leonard. We are your hosts, and this week we are in the spirit of WrestleMania, obviously, as it's around the corner. Not really crazy about too much on the card for this year's WrestleMania, but we are going to talk about two of the WrestleManias that we enjoy a lot. Specifically, these are underrated WrestleManias to us, and we're going to get started with Leonard's pick, which is WrestleMania 5. And WrestleMania 5 took place April 2nd, 1989 at the Boardwalk Hall in Atlantic City, New Jersey. This was the second one to be held in a Trump building after WrestleMania 4. These were the only two to do that. But that is what they had here. It was an interesting entrance, this one. And they had to go down the long stairwell, and everybody kept tripping on the same area, which I noticed rewatching it back. There's this like one bump it looked like everybody was tripping on. But anyway, Leonard, take it away. Why did you pick WrestleMania 5?
Well, WrestleMania 5 is underrated to me because while there might not be anything super memorable or maybe WrestleMania moment worthy outside of, let's say, the main event, which we'll get to, I think it's a very solid show overall with some solid matchups and talent pairings. It feels like Vince McMahon, the guys are figuring out the WrestleMania formula by this point. WrestleMania 1, we talked about when we did the rebook, was kind of a glorified MSG house show with more celebrities added. 2 was literally all over the place. It was from 3 different venues on the same day. 3 was, of course, the mega classic show up in Detroit. 4 was the tournament. So 5 seems like they said, hey, you know what we did for 3? Let's do that again. Let's take that template, that structure, that feel, that hype. Let's do it like we did that. And pretty much every WrestleMania since then has sort of had that kind of feeling. It's like they've followed the same template. And this is when they figured it out. This is what works for us. You know what?
I forgot to mention the attendance was 18,946.
Thanks. That's very important to know. And just the way some of the storylines pay off and some start here, the way the show builds and the match quality, length, the intensity of the crowd, the big names and how they got used. And there's a lot of top names from this era from top to bottom. For me, the worst part of it is the segments are really lousy. You start with Rockin' Robin singing America the Beautiful, who can't sing.
Yeah, that was rough. And it should be noted
you got
Rockin' Robin. There will be an upcoming Dark Side of the Ring episode on, Grizzly Smith's whole family, including Jake the Snake and Rockin' Robin.
And Sam Houston.
Right. So anyway.
So yeah, it'd be interesting seeing that. I had not heard that was a subject. And then there's the Bushwhackers eating at the WrestleMania brunch, and Mr. Fuji cheats to win the WrestleMania 5K. And those are all horrible. And if I was going to rebook this, I would cut all those segments.
Right.
And I'm going to jump ahead. I'm going to talk about the main segment that most people remember from this show, and that's the Piper's Pit. Right. That features Brother Love and Morton Downey Jr. And people really remember, and it still shows up in montage clips from time to time, Piper ripping the kills off of Brother Love, and he's wearing the red underpants, and Morton Downey Jr. smoking a cigarette, and Piper sprays him with the fire extinguisher. But the thing is, that whole segment I didn't time it, but it's very long.
Yes.
And there's a lot of stuff that you couldn't get away with today. Language used, innuendo used, that they couldn't do today.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of there's a lot of terminology that they use there. And although I agree, it was long. Like, to me, it's right up there with the Jimmy Snuka coconut. From Piper's Pit. I thought that the segment was really funny, and knowing how close Bruce Pritchard and Piper were in real life, it almost adds like a context to it that makes it funnier to watch.
And 2, Pritchard gets to do his Roddy Piper impression. And of course, now we know because of his podcast, he has great impressions of a lot of wrestling personalities.
Right.
But we didn't know that then. But watching this back, it was kind of neat to see Pritchard being able to bust that out.
Right.
And just for history's sake, I'll review quickly because I think a lot of people are going to be like, "Who the hell is Morton Downey Jr.?" No relation to Robert Downey Jr.
Right.
But real quick, Morton was a radio shock jock in the Don Imus mold, who had a late night talk show that was one of the first trash TV shows. This was prior to Jerry Springer.
Yep.
And he would have controversial guests on and controversial subject matter, and he would call them names and he would blow smoke in their face. And it was a really popular show around this time period from about 87 to 90. And I remember it being on the air. It usually aired on Fox affiliates late at night. And in some markets, it got better ratings than the Tonight Show. But, sponsors started to pull out, and Arsenio Hall came along, and it got pushed to a later time slot in most markets. And so it kind of faded away as quick as it was big.
Right.
But I just wanted to kind of mention who Morton Downey was. The idea was at the time he was a big, obnoxious loudmouth. And of course, Roddy Piper was a big, obnoxious loudmouth. So it made a lot of sense for these two to meet here. So again, I wouldn't ditch the segment. I probably would just shorten it a little bit.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's go back, and I'm going to just hit very quickly kind of the matches in order and a couple thoughts. The opener is Hercules versus Haku, which continues storylines between Hercules and Bobby Heenan and the Heenan family, where Heenan sold Hercules' contract to Ted DiBiase, and Herc didn't want to go. Haku is really underrated, especially during this period. And this was a good power match and good use of the characters. Hercules getting the win was the right choice here to get the crowd going. And Hercules is the kind of guy, especially during this period too, if he has the right opponent, he can go. And I think Haku was a good opponent for him.
Yeah, I liked Hercules, his music at this time.
Mm-hmm.
Very much of the, ancient Greek type,
right. They were pushing the Hercules connection even more than they ever had here.
And King Haku, I thought worked for him as well. A hell of an entrance. I don't think any of the people carrying his throne went on to be famous, but I could be wrong.
No, I was looking. I didn't recognize anybody, but you never know.
That seems to be a thing as time goes along. But yeah, no, this was a solid opener.
That's how you break in, is you carry the throne for somebody.
Yeah.
Second matchup was the Rockers versus the Twin Towers, which I thought was a really good showcase for the Rockers, even in a loss.
Right.
It was a classic big man, little man match that went up a notch in my book because of how innovative the offense of the Rockers were at this time.
Right.
And both of their opponents, particularly Boss Man, could go. They were very agile for their size. And you got a great spot where Shawn Michaels jumps off of the top, Boss Man catches him and turns into a power bomb.
Right.
You have a catch turn power bomb in 1989.
Yeah.
So I thought this was a really fun match that I kind of forgot about, so I rewatched it. But that's a hidden gem of the card. Next up, we have Ted DiBiase versus Brutus Beefcake. It had a weak double countout finish. The match itself was good up to that point, with DiBiase leading the way. He had his moments. Beefcake had his. And I think this is one where they kind of misstep, and they were like, well, let's protect both guys, where if one guy winning either way, I think would have helped to elevate the other.
Yeah, I liked this feud. And, the ending, as you said, was kind of not what anybody would have wanted to see. But like the match was okay. And, I thought these guys had good chemistry. I mean, DiBiase in this era had some really good feuds that were not for titles at all. And that to me is one of the things that made him a special talent. But yeah, this match was fine for what it was. Just would have changed the ending. But
yep. Then we get Bushwhackers versus the Rujo Brothers, which is a pretty fun comedy match for the most part. It was kind of a nice line between comedy when the Bushwhackers were in charge of the match, and it kind of turned into real wrestling whenever the Rujos were on offense. There's an early spot with Jimmy Hart's jacket where he takes where they're pulling it between him and he takes a bump, and that's really fun. So I think it's okay to have lighter comedy matches. It's not just you want to do a whole card of it. So I think this was fine where it was.
It's funny though because I grew up just knowing the Bushwhackers as the Bushwhackers, but as I got older and as you learn more about wrestling, and where careers started and where they went, like the Sheep Herders
Yeah.
were a team that were in a lot of bloodbaths, and it's just for those who only watch WWF, you might not know that, but yeah, they had an entire career that was a lot more hardcore, to use the term.
Yeah, go find some of that stuff, you out there watching. It's interesting to say the least. I think I lost a poster.
That's all right.
I lost a poster. And that was Undertaker at Backlash. So next up we have a real hidden gem of the card, which is Curt Hennig versus the Blue Blazer, who is of course Owen Hart.
Yeah,
this was real good back and forth, good moves, good pacing, good story being told within the match. Blazer got in some real innovative offense, and Hennig was able to hang in that regard. He wasn't the size of a cruiserweight, but he fits in with the cruiserweights of the period, like an Owen Hart, like a Shawn Michaels, those type of people. So this is a really great match. I think with any WrestleMania, you've got to have like your top match, your second match, and then like a couple hidden gems. And I really would say this is, and I would probably give this even more time. If we were cutting some of the segments, I would give this like another 5 minutes at least.
Right.
We got Demolition versus Powers of Pain, which I think is kind of a forgotten feud. I think to a degree. Because you had this great double turn between the Demos and the Powers of Pain at Survivor Series, which they recap, that pays off here. You have Mr. Fuji wrestling here, which it fits the storyline, and his segments are really good because he was a wrestler and he was good in the ring. So I think they utilize him really well when he does get in there.
Yeah.
The ceremonial salt bit at the end, I think, took too long to set up. But the match itself was really good, and it helped cemented Demolition as baby faces and the dominant team of their era. So it's another one where the finish was off, but the match itself was really good.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that it helped in this match that you had commentary from somebody like Jesse Ventura, who reminded people that Mr. Fuji had a career. And was once, both of them made sure to mention that he was once a holder of the tag team titles. So, yeah, I mean, I thought that this feud was really good. All big, powerful guys, but Demolition was peak form.
Yeah.
Era, so yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting to think what would have happened if they would have went the other way. Said, well, let's push the POP instead.
Right.
Next up, we got Dino Bravo with Ronnie Garvin. I'm a huge Ronnie Garvin mark. This match only lasts a few minutes. And weird too, before the match even starts, Jimmy Snuka comes out, and that feels real awkward. Like, hey, here's Jimmy Snuka, and he gets a nice pop, and I get the idea that they want him to be on the show to show that he's back, but just like they just shoved him in there before this match. But anyway, it's about 3 minutes long, and that's my main gripe, is that there's some matches that are just too short. And if you cut the dead weight, I would give this match like 10 minutes, because if you just let Bravo and Garvin just slug it out, I think you would have a good brawl that the fans could get behind. I do like the Frenchie Martin takes the Garvin stomp after the match. That's a plus, but they could have gave this more time. Strike Force's Brainbusters, we of course talked about when we ranked all of Tito Santana's WrestleMania matches. This is a really good match, as we talked about. You got two of the top four workers in the WWF at the time. You've got the great storyline of the Strike Force breakup, the great selling by Rick Martel, the good promo after of him explaining why he did what he did. So we've talked about this match before, but again, a very good match, one of the best matches on the card. And again, an example of where they took WrestleMania and they just didn't end storylines, they began storylines.
Absolutely.
So, and then after this was Piper's Pit, which we talked about. And then after that, we've got Andre versus Jake the Snake Roberts, which is pure sports entertainment, which I think actually works pretty well, considering how physically deteriorated Andre was by this point. Big John Studd's the guest referee, and there's some continuity there as he and Andre feuded forever. But the face and heel rules are switched. Andre's the heel this time, Studd's the face. You have the turnbuckle pad removed that Jake takes at the start of the match. which helps to tell the story there. You have Dibiase stealing the snake and then Jay getting it back to scare Andre. So for what it was, this was a solid match. And I think, I'm not sure who would have mapped it out, who would have booked it, but I think they did a really great job in what story can we tell without Andre being physically able to work a match really. And from a storyline standpoint, sports entertainment standpoint, it's good. It's fun.
Yeah, no, I like this match and I like this feud. And, Andre's matches are never technically, 5-star type things, but they are really entertaining to watch. And, you just constantly, you're in awe of him and his presence. And I could be wrong, but I feel like I remember Bruce Pritchard talking about how Andre didn't like other giants. And so I'm not sure how fond he was of Big John Studd in real life. But
I believe he seriously didn't like Studd from everything I've heard and remember.
And there's like a look when he gets into the ring and like finally meets eyes with Big John Studd that I think kind of tells the real story. Like Andre kind of glares at him as he gets in the ring. But yeah, the whole storyline here was good. And, look up some of Jake the Snake Roberts stories about Andre and this time period. A lot of them are really funny. So.
Yeah, any Andre story is a good Andre story. And then we have the Hart Foundation versus Rhythm and Blues, who was Honky Tonk Man and Greg Valentine.
This is pre-Rhythm and Blues.
What?
This is pre-Rhythm and Blues territory.
Oh, this is. You know what? I didn't even notice that they weren't calling them Rhythm and Blues.
This is pre-dark hair on Valentine era. But yes, technically it is Rhythm and Blues, but they weren't referred to that just yet.
I didn't even notice that. I was just like, oh, it's Rhythm and Blues. And that's the notes I made. Hey, it's Rhythm and Blues. Or as Honky said, the Rhythm and Snooze a lot of the time. This is a good little match with guys who know how to work and tell a story, and they all know how to work with each other. All the tag matches on this show are pretty solid. I would say all of them are good. This carries on the feud between the Hart Foundation and Jimmy Hart because Hart turned on them. Hart turned on them. They didn't dump as a manager. Hart turned on them. And I just thought this was a good little tag match, and I like all the guys involved here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we have what I would say is the second best match on the card, and that is Rick Rude versus the Ultimate Warrior. This is one of Warrior's best matches. Rude and Savage has always got the best out of Ultimate Warrior because they knew how to use him. And I like the spot at the beginning where Rude jumps Warrior and goes for a knee lift, but Warrior's still wearing the title belt, and he needs the title belt and like hurts his knee. That's brilliant. I've never seen anybody do that.
Rude's selling has become somewhat of a thing on Twitter and social media. Like people have gone back to look at some of the ways he would sell atomic drops and suplexes and stuff like that knee spot. Like, he was just outstanding. And it's unfortunate that on the network, you don't have his original theme song, which bothers me to no end.
I noticed that because when it first came on, I was like, wait, it was almost like an uncanny valley thing.
Right.
Because it almost sounds like it.
Yeah.
But it's not.
Right. But yeah.
I wouldn't assume that music is copyrighted, but I guess it is.
I don't know. I'm wondering if there's like some sort of issue or lawsuit with some of those theme songs going on. I don't, who knows? But no, you're right. Rude is one of the people that really had good chemistry with Warrior and was able to make the most of the matches with him.
Yeah, and this had a really famous finish with Warrior trying to suplex Rude back into the ring from the apron. Heenan pulls his foot and then holds onto it so he can't kick out and gets the pin. And you still see that in clips, montages for Heenan, Warrior, Rude, WrestleMania to this day. Great famous finish. After this, we get Bad News Brown versus Jim Duggan, which is another match that I think just needed more time and a better finish to be decent. It's a wild brawl that goes nowhere. It just ends in a double DQ because they're fighting. It's chair versus 2x4, and there's no reason for them to be doing that. So I would either cut that or just give it more time.
Yeah, I mean, there's 14 matches on this card. I think this one probably could have been cut.
Yeah, could have been cut. I think you cut the lousy segments and you go maybe down to 10 matches. I didn't reorder it, but it's pretty easy to figure out what to keep and what not. And then a match that you would dump, which is probably the worst match of the night, and that's Red Rooster Terry Taylor versus Bobby the Brain Heenan. And this is the pre-main event slot. This is the Let Me Up match. Before the main event. It only goes a couple of minutes altogether. It is a payoff to a feud and a storyline between Heenan and Taylor, because Heenan was managing the Red Rooster and then kicked him out because he sucks. And you know, Heenan can wrestle.
Yeah.
And I've always liked the line that he said was that I would wrestle like a manager and manage like a wrestler.
Right.
And you know, this starts out okay, but it just doesn't go anywhere. I would cut the match. I get that it's a storyline payoff. Maybe you do that a different way.
I think that Heenan has talked about how Warrior legitimately hurt him in some of the spots that they would do together. I don't know if specifically it was this event, but I know that he's talked a lot about how stiff the Warrior was with him. So the abrupt ending to this match, or how quick it was rather, might have had something to do with the fact that he probably wasn't really feeling it after getting press slammed by the Warrior.
Yeah, true point. I know that they had the series of weasel suit matches.
Right.
He would beat him, put in a weasel suit. I know Bobby said that he's been injured and beat up from that series of matches.
Right.
So now we're down to the main event, which is Randy Savage versus Hulk Hogan for the title. Maybe not a great match technically, but it's a really solid storyline. The crowd is super hot for it. It's great storytelling, playing, you know, over the course of a year. This is a year-long story. They don't do things like this anymore. And it's the implosion of the Mega Powers, how Miss Elizabeth was caught in the middle. It's just an electric atmosphere. It's crazy how, like, the crowd's pretty good throughout, but man, they jack up another level.
Oh yeah,
this comes up. And this is what I think a problem, you know, with current WrestleManias, because they're so long that a lot of times by the main event they're dead.
Yeah.
And here the crowd really gets into it. Hogan bleeds from a cut over the eye, which is kind of rare to see him bleed, although we're going to talk more about that in the future. Good use of Liz here. You know, she's just kind of there, but the way they use her is like a chess piece and kind of move her back and forth between them.
Right. And then Hebner finally gets rid of her.
Yeah, I totally Hebner moves her out. But yeah, just a good match between two guys that know how to work. Again, more of a story than it's not Steamboat Savage, but it's a really, really good match and a fun match to watch.
Yeah, no, this is one of my favorite Hulk Hogan matches. I think that he and Savage had really great chemistry, and this, to me, I mean, this storyline was fantastic. The long drawn out way that they presented it, the subtleties over a year-long period. It was really, really well done. And yeah, I mean, just this is like the definition of a main event. So
yeah, and you know, overall, in summary, you know, I don't think it's a great or bad WrestleMania, but it's one that I feel has a lot to offer in the storylines and in the talent involved and how they're booked. You cut a few of the dug segments, maybe a couple of the shorter matches, maybe give more time to a couple others. I think you improve this becomes an all-time classic show. So I admit it has faults, but it's still one I really enjoy, and I still think a really good underrated WrestleMania overall, especially from the old school era, maybe from the first 10 to 15 years of the event.
Yeah, no, I agree. This was during a time when, the belts really meant something. And, there's a lot of just genuinely solid matches with interesting characters on this card. I mean, I had no hesitation to rewatch this because to me, it's a fun event and it's capped off with a superb main event all around. But, just watching each of these matches was really well done, and like I said, the entrance was interesting. The long coming down the stairwell and then to the ring. Yeah, it was. It's an interesting the way they had the set go, and just the camera work was all really really cool. It's always neat to revisit these.
Mm-hmm.
Well, next is going to be my pick, which happened 2 years later and is WrestleMania 7. So WrestleMania 7 took place March 24th, 1991 at the Los Angeles Memorial Sports Arena. And one of the background stories is that this was originally going to be held at the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum, which is adjacent to the sports arena. But they changed that at the last minute because of security concerns regarding Sergeant Slaughter's Iraqi sympathizer character. And, they were a little unsure of what might happen if they were at the Coliseum. So they moved it indoors, and obviously that resulted in a little bit less people, but I guess sales, like there was some comp tickets to help fill out the show, but I guess around 11,900 to 15,000 tickets were sold right before the move, so they didn't really have any issues with it overall. So let's get to the card. There is a dark match here. Coco Beware and the Brooklyn Baller. I did not see that one, Leonard. Did you look that up?
No, I did not. I saw it was on the agenda. I called it an agenda, but the list. But I didn't search that out. I just watched this on the network, so it didn't have the dark match on it. Before we get going, though, I want to mention that after I watched WrestleMania 5, I said, oh, well, maybe I should have went with my secondary choice, which was this. And then you said you wanted to do WrestleMania 7, so I still get to talk about it. And one thing before we get to matches, all I mentioned is that I love the ever-present flag banners and WrestleMania logo in the background. Whenever they do the wide shot of the ring, you see that, and it's really, really simple, but there's something cool about it that's memorable about it. I think when you see clips, you automatically know that's WrestleMania 7 when you see it.
Yeah.
And all the segments are better than WrestleMania 5. Because they're just pre-match promos for the most point that help to hype things. Yeah. I think the celebrity interaction is fun. You've got Regis Philbin and Alex Trebek and Marla Maples all doing interviews. And of course, Trebek and Philbin are hosts, so they know how to do that, and they feel very comfortable doing that. With the WrestleMania rebook, I thought I liked your card better than mine. I like your show here better than mine. So, go ahead and start on the matches.
Yeah, and I forgot to make the tagline for this event was Superstars and Stripes Forever, very much a patriotic show. It's worth noting this was the first WrestleMania not to have Jesse Ventura as color commentator. We would have Gorilla Monsoon with Bobby Heenan for most of the show, although Jim Duggan and Lord Alfred Hayes would appear in certain matches where Heenan was not available. I think that this is one of the better renditions of America the Beautiful with Willie Nelson. And in this case, the crowd really, really dug Willie Nelson. There wasn't, from what I heard anyway, there wasn't too many detractors. It seemed that they, enjoyed him. And there's a ton of celebrities here. We'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this card also has a lot of matches. And we open with the Rockers against Haku and the Barbarian. And, this was a solid opener. The Rockers were kind of an ideal team to open an event. Haku and the Barbarian, I really, really remember them as a tag team. Like, I feel like they were kind of never really had their due as a tag team. But, it's also worth noting that this is the end of an era in many ways. And they're kind of transitioning to a different era after this, because after this, in December, the Rockers would split. So this was, the last WrestleMania that would see them as a tag team. But this was a solid opener, I thought.
Yeah, and it should be mentioned that Haku and Barbarian went on to tag as the Faces of Fear in WCW.
Right.
They just didn't get a lot of shine here when they were WWF working together as part of the Heenan family. I think I actually like this better than the Rockers Twin Towers from WrestleMania 5 that we talked about, because I think that Haku and Barbarian could just go a little bit more. Yeah. There's some great double team spots here. There's one where the Rockers had a couple stereo moves on Haku and then walk into a double clothesline by Barbarian, which they both sell with like flips. Yeah. Great sell there. There's this neat spot where Haku has like Janae up in something, and Barbarian gives him like a one-handed bulldog over the ropes and clotheslines him. There's a spot where Michaels is giving the punch count to Haku, and then does a turnaround crossbody on the Barbarian. So just great stuff here. And yeah, it's a good hot opener based on the innovative offense of the Rockers.
Yeah. Next, we have the Texas Tornado against Dino Bravo. Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich, he picks up a quick win here. There's not really much to say about this. They were really pushing Texas Tornado, hard. Obviously, his career would have a lot of ups and downs, and his life sadly ended way too soon. And I guess there was also an issue with the fact that, he didn't have a foot. But, so But when I was younger, though, I really liked the Texas Tornado gimmick. I thought that his punch and the claw thing were cool. As a kid, I thought that stuff was cool. But there's not much to say about this match overall. Only a little.
No, I mean, Bravo felt sloppy to me, but it's probably because he knew he wasn't going over. So again, if we were going to cut stuff, I would cut this one.
Yeah. Next, we have, to me, one of the under the radar matches of the card, which is the British Bulldog against the Warlord. This was a really good era for the British Bulldog. The Warlord, although, we need to talk about his gimmick at this point. So obviously the Powers of Pain had split. They put the Barbarian back into tag action, but the Warlord, it looked like they were going to try something with him, but it was like this Phantom of the Opera / night type gimmick. Like, his mask was so odd to me, and the promo that they do his does beforehand, where he's just kind of growling and smiling at the camera, was a little weird. And I also thought Slick being paired with him was kind of odd. But having said that, I thought that this was a really good power match and a really good finish. About 8 minutes this match, but I thought it really worked for what it was.
I didn't like it as much as you did, but I do agree that it's a pretty good power match between two guys that can work that style. It was all built about Davey Boy being able to break the Warlord's full Nelson, which he does.
Right.
And then it's just like, oh, he did that.
Right. Yeah.
Like, breaking a move doesn't lead to a finish, and I think that was kind of the issue here with that for me. But yeah, I think it's a solid little match. It certainly wasn't anything I would cut. Maybe I might book it a little different, but yeah, solid match between two decent guys. And I always thought they were going for like a Mad Max thing with the Warlord at this point.
Oh,
that he was a post-apocalyptic Warlord. That's always what I thought.
That might have worked a little bit better. I was definitely getting a Phantom of the Opera vibe when I rewatched it.
Yeah, with the half mask, I get that. Yeah.
But yeah, they didn't build the full Nelson here like they did with Chris Masters.
No, not quite the same. But that was sort of the storyline going in, and they did kind of work that. But
and so next we have the Nasty Boys against the Hart Foundation for the WWF Tag Team Championships, and I enjoy this match a lot. And this was the end of this, and the way that the Nasty Boys were celebrating the win, to me, was so great. I mean, it makes the titles so important here. And this was, again, though, after this WrestleMania, the Hart Foundation would be no more. They would split the team and have Bret Hart go into singles competition. So again, going with my kind of end of the era theme, you'll also see that here. But yeah, really, really terrific tag match.
Yeah, again, another match I didn't like quite as well as you did, but I really did like it. I think it was solid, not spectacular. Follows the basic tag formula. The teams have nice chemistry with each other. You got, the nice long heat segment on the faces. The cheap finish with the megaphone kind of kills it for me, and I think it kind of killed it for the crowd, because you have the Hart Foundation hit their finisher, and then there's kind of a gap until they get to the megaphone spot.
Yeah.
And I think I would not have them hit their finisher. I would have them do something else and then do the megaphone. But yeah, the post match where they're celebrating the back and they're spraying Marlon Maples with champagne and all that, that's a really fun segment. I did enjoy that as well. But yeah, another real solid tag match. Good use of the formula.
Next, we have Jake Roberts against the model Rick Martell in the blindfold match. And look, I'm going to say right off the bat, I understand that, people, when they look really hard, they can see that there's spots where they can see out of their hoods, their blindfolds. I don't care. As a kid, I loved this. This was so great to me. And you listen to the crowd at this match, they were all in on this gimmick match. To me, this was, and you know what? There was a lot of comedy in this too. We talked about some of the comedy with the Bushwhackers match in WrestleMania 5. There was so much really good comedy in this, specifically Martell, who really went out of his way to really get this gimmick across, I thought. But hey, I understand that this is not for everybody, but I was a big Jake Roberts fan, and this storyline to me was really well done. as a kid, yeah, man, Jake got sprayed with arrogance, and is he blind? And this is all stuff that was peak fandom for me. So, what did you
Mhm.
think?
I invested in the storyline as a kid like you as well. I do agree that the crowd was super hot into it. I mean, they bought it hook, line, and sinker. They were so deep into it, and that helped. I think it's a dumb gimmick, and it's a shame because Jake Roberts and Rick Martel straight up could have just a great match. I don't know if they ever had a clean blow off. I would have to go back and research that.
Yeah,
It
I think
looks
that
so
like they probably did
stupid.
house show stuff, if I had to guess.
Yeah, house show stuff. It just looks so stupid. It's hard to get over. Although a lot of people call this like one of the worst matches in WrestleMania history and worst
Oh
gimmick
God,
matches of all
really?
time.
I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, and I was gonna say I don't. Some people do, and I think it's because they see it on paper and go, "Oh, that has to be stupid." But if you actually watch the match, they work the gimmick as well as they can, and the fact that the crowd is into it, as we've said so much, helps a whole lot. So yeah, I would rather have saw them just go in there and do it straight up. But I get the idea of giving it a gimmick and something unique, and it does certainly make it memorable at least. I mean, I'm not against it. Again, it seems like I don't like this as well as you did, but I'm not against it.
Well, that's why we picked these WrestleManias, right?
Yeah.
So next we have the beginning of the streak. We have the Undertaker against Jimmy Snuka. Jimmy Snuka was obviously way past his prime here,
Yeah.
and this was a short match, and it did what it needed to. It got over the Undertaker as this unstoppable monster, and the fact that he beat Jimmy Snuka, was a big thing. I think still fans, even kids at this era, knew that Jimmy Snuka was past his prime.
Yeah.
But he was a guy you always looked forward to him kind of coming off the top rope with his big splash. But the Undertaker was on the rise. He was obviously a huge character.
Yeah.
So.
And the crowd is just so in awe of the Undertaker here. Like they're silent, but it's not bad silence. It's like a holy shit silence. He is so crisp here. He is so fresh.
Yeah.
And nothing against him over the years, but if you go back and if you only know him from say like the past 10 to 15 years, if you're a newer fan and you go back and you watch this, it will blow your mind.
Absolutely.
How good he is in this short match. And I would also like to mention that Gorilla Monsoon calls Snuka the Phenom a couple different times during this match. And of
That's
course,
true.
that would be a nickname that they would use later for Undertaker. So I always wondered so now I should say, I wonder if they were like appropriated that when they were checking stuff, for the streak and went, Phenom, let's call him the Phenom.
That's
I don't know, but
and
yeah.
Paul Bearer, obviously the Undertaker was fairly new at this point and had Brother Love as a manager initially.
Yeah.
But here he has Paul Bearer, and Paul Bearer was in like pretty prime creepy mode at this point. His facial expressions were contorted in a way that I don't know of any other human being that could probably make some of the expressions that he did. In Heenan's commentary, obviously throughout this whole thing is just so great.
Yeah. I had after the match, they do a post-match promo with Regis Philbin in the back.
Yeah, which is great.
And I had a friend of mine, shout out to Dave Hardy, do a watercolor. He's an artist. I had him do a watercolor picture of one of the scenes. It's Undertaker and Regis and Paul Bearer backstage in front of the banner, and as a present for our good friend Dan Weber, friend of the show, as a birthday present. So Dan Weber has somewhere a watercolor portrait of UT, Paul Bearer, and Regis from WrestleMania 7.
Well, next time Dan's on the show, we're gonna have him show that off for sure.
Yeah.
So next we have the Ultimate Warrior against Randy Savage in a career-ending match, and I think this might be, again, I don't know what your thoughts on this one are, Leonard, but to me, this is one of my favorite matches of all time, if not my favorite match, period. And the reason is, I think that this whole segment, the match, the post-match incidents, is like a perfect example of what pro wrestling can bring to the table. You have everything in this match. You have story, you have a good match, there's drama, the crowd is super into it, you buy everything that's going on. We talked with WrestleMania 5 how much chemistry Rude and Ultimate Warrior had. To me, Nobody had as much chemistry with Warrior like Randy Savage did. They brought out the best in each other, I should say. And this match also, even though like it's not, again, like technically, yeah, you could have other people, Daniel Bryan's, Bret Hart's, and say their matches were better in certain ways. But this match was so good, and like the crowd was weighing on every single move. And this was also one of the first times I can remember multiple finishers being used. And it is so much more important here than it is today. Like when Savage comes off the rope with 5 of his elbows, like you think there's no way that the Warrior is getting up from this.
He's dead.
Like, I mean, it's just, to me, this match is so great. And, you know, I've always been a huge Miss Elizabeth fan. The way they used her here was really great. I mean, my gosh, you see clips of people crying in the front row all the time. I can't say enough about this match. I always look forward to watching it. My wife, who knows very little about wrestling, when we first got together, I showed her this whole thing, and even she was emotional at watching this. It's hard not to be, you know, even if you know a little bit about the backstory, that's really all you need to know. But yeah, I mean, also a shout out to Queen Sherry, who was really good in the post match beatdown and all that as well. So
yeah, I mean, one of the best WrestleMania matches ever. 5 stars for me. It's not my favorite match of all time. It's in my top 10. Savage and Warrior would also have a really good match at SummerSlam 92. Not quite as good as this, but really good. Yeah, I mean, everything you said. Sherry plays her part perfectly throughout. We talked before the match between Shawn Michaels and Tito Santana at WrestleMania 8 when she was with Michaels. My God, how good she was.
yeah.
And again, when Elizabeth comes in, again, you talk about long-term storylines and character development they don't do anymore. This was paying off since they came into the WWF in 1985.
Yeah.
This paid off, the characterizations and that whole storyline, everything they had ever done up to that point. It is paid off beautifully. And, you know, note how easily Savage turns face from Sherry attacking him to Liz coming in.
Right.
And that's all it takes for the crowd to get with him again because she loves him.
Right.
You know, you couldn't do the way they tell a story today, you couldn't do it.
No.
You're not going to get that type of emotion. You know, great spots throughout, like Warrior catching Savage from coming off the top and then setting him down and slapping him in the face early on. So good. He goes out and he gets a chair and he throws a chair in the ring. And then when the ref is getting rid of it, he attacks Warrior from behind. It was just a distraction. You know, so many good spots. And again, like you said, one of the most important things about this match is the use of multiple finishers. The Warrior hits his finisher too, and it doesn't get the pin.
Yeah.
And that is like, you see that in every single match today.
Yeah.
27 finishers in a row. The guy keeps kicking out.
People are used.
It doesn't mean anything. Yeah, it doesn't mean anything.
Now, back then, you didn't see it. Like
you didn't see it.
Hard, like if ever. And just the finish of this match to me is one of the most memorable finishes of all time. And I'm not talking about the reunion. I'm talking about Warrior putting his foot on the chest. And it was just such a, like, there are very few wrestlers, I think, that would agree to a finish like that today.
Yeah.
Like, but Savage did. So.
Well, you know, Savage supposedly was going to take some time off and retire or semi-retire. So from what I always heard, he was like, yeah, you know, let's do it. Let's put him over if I'm doing it. You know, sure, kick out 5 elbows and do all that. And I don't think it hurt him in the long run. You know, he took some time off and he wound up coming back.
The irony is that the Warrior was kind of out the door
not too long after. Yeah.
Not too long after this for various reasons. But yeah, in a way, it's interesting in that way. And you don't see, you know, you've seen other matches with somebody's career on the line, but there are so few that are both careers are on the line, which made this the suspense of this all.
Yeah, the stakes were high and they played into that well.
Yeah. Next, we have Demolition, the Smash and Crush version of Demolition with Mr. Fuji against Tenryu and Kitao from Japan. And, this was a very short match. And at the time, when I was a kid, this was like one of my least favorite things ever on this card, simply because I had no idea who these guys were. I didn't care. And, I was still into Demolition, for the most part, but I was just like, what is this? Why is this here? And why should I care about these guys? Looking at it now, it's funny to me because Katao, who they do say was a former grand champion sumo wrestler, if anybody's seen the clip of him shooting on John Tenta Earthquake online, Leonard, I don't know if you've seen this, but like he tried.
I think I have, yes.
And John Tenta was also a sumo wrestler at one point. And so this guy, Katao, tries to shoot on Earthquake in the ring, and it does not go well. It was just great because you see Katao here, and he's certainly a big boy. But yeah, this match is just kind of there for me.
Well, I think the point is that's what it was. After Warrior Savage,
Right.
I need to take a piss and get some nachos. So, that's what this is for, because again, the guys are unknown. I think it's a decent little match, but just the crowd is dead and I can't get into it. I don't know a lot about Japanese wrestling. That's a soft point for me. I don't know a lot of that stuff. So I think it's an okay match. It just didn't have any juice to it. But I think they did that on purpose because they knew they had to have a spot filler after what they were doing.
Next, we have Big Boss Man against Mr. Perfect with Bobby Heenan for the Intercontinental Championship. I really like this match as well. I was a huge Big Boss Man fan. We went to a flea market when I was young, and I got a real nightstick there back in the days when you could buy that stuff anywhere.
Yeah.
That looked exactly like Boss Man's nightstick. So I was a huge fan of his. I liked Mr. Perfect as a heel. I thought that this was, a fun little match. They might not have had the most, kumbiotic styles, but I liked it. I also liked the appearance of Andre, who, Andre obviously was not in good health at this point, but just seeing him and Heenan together again was really cool. And, hitting Perfect in the head with the belt was fun too. So yeah, I enjoyed this.
I didn't like seeing Andre because he looked so bad.
It's hard to watch it in that way now.
It's very now. At the time, as a kid, I probably didn't even think about it, but now when you see it, it makes me sad because he is in so much pain. He can barely move.
Yeah.
Even the belt shot was like a feather. It was like because he just couldn't do anything, and that's sad to see. I thought the match was pretty good up and to that point. I think Kurt was selling great for Boss Man. Boss Man was so quick for his size, especially here. And I didn't like again. I understand a DQ finish, but I don't think you do that at WrestleMania. You kind of have a double down from both guys, and then it ends immediately with Heenan's guys running out because it was just time for them to run out.
Yeah, the finish was the weakest part of this for me.
Yeah, ended poorly, but started great. Loved the beginning of it. And then another one that, again, you change the finish. I think it becomes one of the best matches on the card, but a solid match overall, and I did enjoy it. And just seeing Andre like that was kind of tough for me.
Yeah, and I think if you had gotten a finish like with Mr. Perfect hitting his perfect plex or something after like a distraction or whatever, I think that could have worked here.
Yeah.
Before we get to the next match, we have Gene Okerlund going into the audience and showing you all the different celebrities. You have Chuck Norris, you have Donald Trump, you have Henry Winkler, you have Lou Ferrigno, and there's others people sitting there. It's so, I remember, I'll never forget like the awkward moment with Henry Winkler, because it looks like Gene Okerlund's going to go to him first, but then he doesn't, and he's like, Chuck Norris, come on over. And so Henry Winkler's just kind of oddly sitting there waiting for his turn. But yeah, a lot of celebrity power here at this one.
I told you I do the fancy wrestling where we book cards and we draft people, and usually one rule to draft is someone has to have appeared at a wrestling show to draft them. So after rewatching the show, I'm now excited to draft Henry Winkler and Lou Ferrigno and use them somehow. Absolutely. in a league. I don't know what I would do with them yet. I think Ferrigno, I think you could use him as a wrestler. I think you could book him. I don't know what I would do with Henry Winkler. I don't know, but I want to use him now.
So after this, you have Earthquake and Greg Valentine. It's a short, pretty short, basically a squash. To get Earthquake over. It was what it was.
Yeah, we're back into like the string of nothing matches. This being one of them. I mean, Greg Valentine was at the end of his career, at the end of in WWF at least. So yeah, can't say a lot.
Yep. Next we have Legion of Doom against Power and Glory. I really like Power and Glory as a tag team, and this match now for me, like at the time, I was a big Legion of Doom fan, and so it was cool to see them destroy. Now, having seen documentaries and listening to podcasts, my like of the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors, has really gone to about zero, simply because they were really good politicians when it comes to making sure they were always over. But the fact that they never wanted to lose, and they never wanted to get pinned clean in the ring, to me, like, is glaring every time I see them on a card now. Like, because here you just have them destroy Power and Glory, which I don't understand why that was necessary. Like, Power and Glory, by the way, had one of the most underrated tag team finishers ever. Like, do you remember?
Oh, so yeah,
right. I love it. But anyway,
it was the Powerplex, right?
I forget what the name was. It was just like, but Hercules flexes him off of the top rope, and then Paul Roma splashes right away.
Yes. I think that was called the Powerplex. I could be wrong.
Okay. But yeah, so this match was short. I don't know if it is record time. Gorilla Monsoon mentions that on commentary.
It's listed as 59 seconds.
Yeah. So yeah.
And that's a shame. Because Power and Glory, or Sour and Gory, as Hawk called them in the pre-match promo, which I thought was funny. Like, they deserved more, especially since this had a storyline that they prevented them from advancing to get a tag shot against the Hart Foundation. So there was beef there. I think this could have been a good power match if you let it be. So if we were going to do a rebook, I would, cut some stuff and give this more time.
Yeah, you wonder if they were going long and they kind of had to cut some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So next we have Virgil against the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. And you know what? Nowadays, we think of Virgil Vincent in a completely different way. Obviously, I don't know if anybody's seen some of the memes online. I've been in New York City, getting on the subway, where I see him with a stand of pictures up, like, in the New York City subway. But at the time, this was such a hot storyline. The fact that Virgil finally turned on DiBiase, and like we said about Miss Elizabeth and Randy Savage, this was years of build.
Yeah, since they debuted.
And Virgil wasn't great in the ring or anything. He has Piper here with him to kind of add a little bit of flavor. Piper was injured, I guess, in a motorcycle accident, and so he's on crutches here. This match ended in a count out, so it was fun to see DiBiase lose. But yeah, this storyline was really great. It's sad that Virgil didn't really have anywhere to go after this, but to see the two of them face each other was neat to me.
Yeah, I mean, again, great build-up of a long storyline. Match is not great here. It's just Virgil landing punches and DiBiase taking a powder outside the ring, and they just keep repeating that over and over again. I think Roddy Piper was kind of shoehorned in and was just there for the star power. I don't think he really adds much. He tracks. Virgil needed the clean win, and instead it's by count out. You do get Sherry coming in, and you get the Sherry DiBiase alliance, which was a new pairing. She gets rid of Savage and she hooks herself to the next wagon immediately.
Right away.
And I didn't like where Virgil encourages Piper to get up after he's injured. That just seemed weird. It was like, my buddy, my mentor, I'm not going to help you up because you need to get your own ass up. And oh no,
a little bit of tough love there
here. Yeah, tough love. So again, like you said, great heat, great story, all that. But yeah, match is not a good payoff to it.
Next, we have the Mountie and Tito Santana. Again, a short short squash. We talked about this match with on our Tito Santana episode, so not much more to add here.
Yep.
Hulk Hogan against Sergeant Slaughter in the main event for the WWF Championship. Again, I'm not afraid to say I was a huge Hogan fan, in this day, and this was such a big event to me. Slaughter was a superb heel champion, and obviously this storyline was controversial at the time, and even in Bruce Pritchard's podcast, Conrad kind of takes him to task a lot for this storyline, but this match was good to me. Is it one of Hogan's best? No. Is it one of his worst? No. But the match was good for what it was. Hogan bleeds here again, as you made mention.
I was like, oh, that's so rare when I watched 5, and then when I watched this, I'm like, oh, he bleeds again.
Right. But yeah, we have Hogan winning the title again here, and again the end of an era theme. After this, you would see a shift. Obviously, WrestleMania 9 would have Hogan get it again very briefly, but yeah, so definitely they're transitioning away from Hulkamania after this, but it was still alive and well a little bit here.
I think it's much better than I remember it being when I watched it again. And I think it's better than it gets credit for. It's a good technical match, no, but it's good character dynamics, the storytelling, and the crowd was super hot.
Right.
And I didn't mind Regis Philbin on commentary, although I probably would use him on a lesser match. And one thing I liked here is that Philbin asked Bobby Heenan, why do you not like Hulk Hogan? And he actually gives an explanation. And I don't know if I've ever heard him explain it before. He says that, Hogan always had the belt and never gave his guys title matches. And he wanted to manage a world champion, and Hogan hogged the belt. And that's perfect motivation.
Yeah, it is.
Because when he says that, I go, wow, I don't know if he ever had point blank said it. Because I always thought one of my favorite long-running storylines was between Bobby Heenan and Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
And when Hulk Hogan finally turns heel and joins the NWO, it's like Bobby Heenan was right. Bobby Heenan wins because everything he always said came true.
Right.
And I always loved that. So, anyway here, yeah, it's a good match. And I'll throw this at you. Interesting thought. Imagine this bout in 1983 in Japan. What that would have looked like between these two guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Slaughter at this time obviously was at the end of his, full-time career, but he's had some great.
Yeah, he would turn face real quick after they kind of did the summer run.
Yeah.
And he would do just have that little bit to put him back in the good graces.
Yeah.
And then I think he was in Rumble 92. And then I think he may have went off of full-time duty shortly after that. And he was a face then. So.
Right. But yeah, no, I like this event. There's a lot of memorable matches on it, and that's one of the reasons why I enjoy watching it. It has a little bit of something for everybody. It has good matches. It has memorable gimmick matches. It has a lot of really good long-running stories that kind of culminate. It has some good tag matches with the classic tag teams there. Yeah, a little bit of everything.
Yeah, and again, after I watched both, I was like, man, I should have picked 7 over 5. I like 7 a little bit better after watching both. I think they both have some similar pluses and some similar minuses. Too long, too many nothing matches, too many short matches. But this is them getting the formula figured out. This is how WrestleMania works. And doing that well for the most part. I love talking about these two shows and having the opportunity to rewatch both of them.
Absolutely, me too. And that'll about do it for our show this week. If you want to share your favorite WrestleManias or what you think is an underrated WrestleMania, please do. Please check out my other show, Dailies to Downloads, and subscribe to our channel. Give us a little bit of love. And for Leonard, my name is Chad. And we will see you next week.